r/AskReddit. What is one fact you learned that you wish you could unlearn? The birds and bees talk my mom gave me included her favorite positions. And why? Forever ruined. Edit. For everyone asking. I was 15. Male. We were driving on a road trip and stuck in the car and I couldn't escape the conversation, which lasted about 2 hours. She was 45. Doggy position was her favorite because of deeper penetration and she liked my stepfather groping her breasts. I was a decade into my own sex life before I could enjoy doggy style without thinking of mom. Long after I lost my virginity, my dad gave me the safe sex talk by telling me how he got the clap in the Navy. My dad is an old school guy from Eastern Europe. When I would leave the house he would just yell behave, and that meant to wear a condom and stay away from vodka. Some female insects don't have any openings intended for impregnating, so their mate will just stab through their exoskeleton to get in there. I've been informed this is called traumatic insemination, and thanks for the PMs. You're all horrible and I love you. Also, some male insects can't tell the difference between the male and female of their own species, so they just go around jizzing in everyone and hope it'll work out. Is a girl or is a boy? Is a Rose or is a Roy? Is a sis or is a bro? Is Yow's got a penis though? Is Yow's Danny? Is Yow's Dan? Is Yow's woman? Is Yow's man? Is Yow's sugar? Is Yow's spice? Is Yow's made with all things nice? Is Yow's just the same as me? Is Yow's Hoz I hope's Yow's B? Is Yow's? Is Yow's? Tell me truths, buddy. I'm Marge's and Yow's. You can die of a brain aneurysm at any time, no matter how young or healthy you are. Archer, what are your 3 biggest fears? That's only number 3. You already have to be closing on a house before you even apply to be on most HGTV shows. It's all fake. If that wasn't the case, those shows would be high pressure. Here are 3 houses. Even if you don't like any of them, you'll still have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on one. They could do it more like actual home buying. Here's a bunch of them. What's your favorite 3? Okay, now which one do you choose? Of all vaginas, a sheep's vagina has the closest resemblance to the human vagina. A lot of stereotypes suddenly make sense in a very uncomfortable way. You think the lamb in Mary had a little lamb was actually a metaphor? Death throes can last at least 20 minutes. Warning, may be upsetting. Took care of a college kid who hanged himself. I'm an EMT, but unfortunately he was too far gone. 30 minutes of CPR and all the brutality that goes with it. Doctor called it. No pulse, no blood pressure, no electrical heart activity. Took him 20 minutes to stop intermittently opening his mouth like he was gasping for air. The family had to be kept waiting in the family room while I checked on him every few minutes to see if he'd stopped. I don't know if that was the right thing to do, but the seasoned doc and nurse recommended it. It was already going to be a traumatic event for the family. No need to give them even worse nightmares envisioning their dead son gasping. Fact of life, but sucks to know. My son did that after we took him off life support. The nurse slipped him a syringe of morphine, which I shall always be grateful for. Yep, really shitty situation. Witnessed a T-bone accident where an older woman in a Honda Civic got hit driver's side by a pickup doing 55-60 miles per hour. I've taken a bunch of trauma classes, so I jumped out to try and help, but there was nothing I could do but just sit there and watch her die. That often, car accidents and other trauma from machinery accidents can leave people both pinched in half and alive. Their organs and blood flow are held in a kind of suspended animation. They can talk and can understand what's happening around them. They are told that when the pressure from the car or machinery is released, they will die. This happened right around the corner from my house a couple years ago. A woman was placing donuts into the trunk of her car to feed the homeless, and a drunk driver drove directly into her car with the woman sandwiched between the 2 cars. Her husband was able to say goodbye to her as the firefighters released the cars from her body. Isn't that what happened to the mom in Signs? Tom, I'm gonna need a ride home. Fatal familial insomnia. One day you start having trouble sleeping. It keeps getting worse and worse until eventually you lose the ability to sleep permanently. About a week after that you basically go insane and die. Me 10 minutes into bed and not able to sleep. So this is it, huh? This is how I go. Aren't there less than a dozen people with that ailment though? Most prisoners on death row are given physicals prior to their execution to determine they are physically fit enough for an injection to work on them effectively. Wasps can remember human faces. Edit. For those curious about the wasp face recognition, National Geographic did an excellent article about it. Check General John Ziska ordered his skin to made into drums upon his death so he could continue leading his soldiers into battle. Samurai would burn incense in their helmets so their corpses would smell nice in the event they were decapitated. Wasps can remember human faces. Can't remember when they are dead. Now, can they? Check General John Ziska ordered his skin to made into drums upon his death so he could continue leading his soldiers into battle. That's actually pretty hardcore and awesome over a fact that'd rather be forgotten. I saw an episode of the show Monsters Inside Me, and on it there was a guy that had a fly hit his eye while he was doing something outside. It was only a fraction of a second, but it was enough time for the fly to lay eggs in his eye. He almost went blind because they were eating his eye from the inside. Now because of that I am super paranoid whenever a fly goes anywhere near my face. Excuse me, the duck? That is a very polite what the duck. Freaking prion diseases. Random mutation. Can occur at any time. Causes proteins in your brain to fold abnormally, which induces healthy proteins to fold into the abnormal shape. Eventually you go insane and die. And there is no treatment possible. And medical instruments that come into contact with prions cannot be sterilized. Autoclaving or any of methods do not work. They must be destroyed. If not, next time they are used in an operation that patient is ducked. Had to study them for my high school biology. One of the most interesting things we looked at. That being said, I have an interest in immunology and disease control anyway. But Kuru disease is pretty ducked up. Care to expand about the impossibility to sterilize the instruments? From the ARPS post I thought this was a genetic mutation. How does that affect the instruments used on the patient in any way? How can the disease be transmittable through the instruments if it's genetic? That Shrek 5 will be written by the boss baby writer edit. Holy shit, thanks for the 10k. There was a Shrek 4? Huh. Yeah, and it will have been released almost a decade before 5, which is supposed to come out in 2019 or 2020. Almost every hand you shake has had a dong in it. That's why I shake hands with my dong instead. Miss me with that gay shit. I found out a friend had an appointment with the same doctor I see. I told him to keep in mind when he shook her hand that she's had a finger up my ass. He didn't like that. There's a video with two girls having their way with one individual cup and its contents. Always fun to reminisce about the old classics. Great, now I'm horny. Anything you learn about koala bears is pretty much awful. Edit. My most upvoted comment is structured around how koala bears. Yes, I saw your comment. You cousin Ozzy. You make eucalyptus diarrhea so that the babies have something to eat. Edit. Koala rabbits. Via the boyfriend. Could you elaborate? I don't care how many times I see this. I will never not read it. That coughing noise the raptors make in Jurassic Park is the sound of turtles ducking. Steven Spielberg went to a zoo to get sounds for the roars, and a zookeeper jokingly mentioned that it was mating season for the tortoises. First fact here I'm glad to know. Perfect. Everything to do with human trafficking and child sex torture videos on the dark web. I could go through life without knowing that. Most of the things you hear about the dark web are myths. Tor is neither an effective place to upload videos nor to stream. Although child porn and sex trafficking sites do exist, it's extremely scarce and difficult to find due to how the majority of those kinds of sites are just made by police looking to catch degenerates. The man who created the FBI's profiling program, John Douglas, says the hardest part of his research was having to listen to recordings of children being tortured to death by psychopaths. That shit stays with you to the grave. Many of the victims of the Hillsborough disaster were so tightly compressed against each other that they died while they were standing. ESPN made a really good documentary on the entire event. I knew very little about it going in and honestly had a hard time breathing watching parts of it. Eli 5 What the Hillsborough disaster was. Your bones are currently wet. I am aware and I am very uncomfortable at the mere thought of it. I think I'd be more uncomfortable if they were dry. You ever have your mouth open and your teeth dry out? I'd rather have wet bones. On average, one person dies by suicide every 40 seconds somewhere in the world. That one person dying every 40 seconds really needs to get some help. On the flip side, their cleric must have insane experience from casting resurrection so much. Matt Bellamy, lead singer of Muse, has a habit of breathing in very sharply and audibly when he sings. Listen to the very end of a line or right before one and you'll hear it. I'm cursed and can't not hear it. And I love Muse so it drives me nuts. Edit. I seem to have made a lot of people rather upset. Duck, you. Dolphins are rapists. I loved them and this ruined it all. And they duck decapitated fish heads for pleasure, I believe. They'll literally rip off your head and skull duck you. On Dean's curse, there is a part of the brain that does automatic breathing. If damaged, it must be done manually. When falling asleep you start to choke, so you die of sleep deprivation. Edit. Wording. They will usually be treated with a non-invasive ventilation (NIV) mask while sleeping, or in more severe cases a trach. Couldn't imagine people from poor countries would die though, as these treatments are cheap. Great, now I am force breathing. Edit. I keep on getting notifications for this comment and end up reminding myself that I stopped force breathing, thus force breathing again. Edit. I continue to be reminded to force breathe. Currently I've gone through 4 separate inhalers and 2 oxygen tanks. I'll do an Ask Me Anything in the future to update. Edit. 2 days later I'm still being reminded to force breathe. You people are cruel creatures. Edit. Still being reminded to force breathe. Edit. I'm continuously being reminded to force breathe via private messages and replies. However, deleting this comment will show my enemy's weakness and I cannot have that. My dad got pneumonia when I was 15. It lasted for 6 months. 2 facts still duck me up. Pneumonia has a terrible smell that radiates around the person who has it. Most nights for the last 2 months were spent with me coming home with my father and him sleeping from 5 to morning. This was because he was a couple months away from dying. I never did anything to help and was in fact ignorant to it. Somehow. Some next level suppression right there. He went to the doctor at last when half the family came down to make him, and the doctor said he was about a week away from death. That still ducks with me, because on top, because of my ignorance, I would have likely woken up one morning to find him dead. It's been about 3 years now and he still has lung issues, but is still kicking around. He will have lung issues the rest of his life. I was one of those stubborn people who had pneumonia and knew it, but refused to see a doctor. On top of the bone rattling cawing, the chills, the not being able to breathe, cawing up bloody mucus and fluids, losing my voice, I kept smoking cigs. I finally decided to see a doctor when I got a cawing fit, passed out and fell off of a beam 100 featuring up. I was in a harness. Doc said I was 3-4 days from death if I didn't come in to get help. I still feel the effects of pneumonia 5 years later. My breathing just isn't the same. The universe could be in a false vacuum state. If this is so, the universe could quantum tunnel to a lower energy true vacuum state at any time. I'm not sure what any of that means, but if it did happen, all life in the universe would be well and truly ducked. Well, I hope that it'd at least be quick considering the forces at play here. The true vacuum bubble would expand at the speed of light from wherever it occurred in the cosmos, and when it reached you, you would just cease to exist as the particles which make you shift to a new state, so you wouldn't see it coming and you wouldn't know when it hits you. That's the reassuring part. The more disturbing part is that some physicists have theorized that true vacuum bubbles may have already been created at various places in the universe. These bubbles are already racing towards us at the speed of light. If someone were to directly poke your brain, you wouldn't feel anything. All the animal deaths in the movie Cannibal Holocaust were real. All animals were harmed in the making of this film. Some judge in Italy thought the human deaths were also real and had Ruggero Deodato arrested for murder. All of the actors had signed a contract requiring them to disappear from public life for a year after the film was released to add credibility to the whole documentary ruse. Deodato had to get them to come out of hiding and appear in court to get the charges dropped. Most cops watch a video of a traffic stop gone wrong where the officer is executed in the middle of the highway, begging for his life. I still can't unhear the death rattle. Kyle Dinkler, right? Yep, haunting. And I was surprised to find that's on YouTube. I guess it's because it doesn't show much, but it sure sticks with you. https://www.youtube.com watch v=siege enclo 1 fik can't believe the cop didn't pull a gun as soon as the guy starting dancing around and charging him. RIP. Yesterday I learned it was possible for someone to get a cockroach in their eyes. So gonna say that. Well, technically you can get anything in your eyes. Leaves, pencils, bits of popcorn, very small sofas. Ducks have a corkscrew penis. And females have what's known as a labyrinthine vagina. Since ducks are voracious rapists, the female essentially chooses whether to allow the penis into the right chamber to fertilize her or not, rather than trying to prevent the sex altogether. Meaning that in ducks, the female body has a way of shutting that whole thing down if it's legitimate rape. New conspiracy theory, Toddikin is actually a duck wearing a human suit. So labyrinthine vagina is totally a name for a hardcore feminist metal band. That the clap, gonorrhea, got its name from the treatment during medieval times known as clapping the penis or slamming the penis between both hands, or a hard surface, to get rid of the pus discharge and thus the infection. Shudders. My grandfather on my former stepfather's side had a story about a time that he was serving in the Pacific. They were in a rain-soaked region walking through high water, similar to that scene in Forrest Gump, when the rain was falling straight up, I believe was the phrase. Anyhow, they'd been marching, soaked to the bone, in and out of standing water. One of his mates has been having an increasingly difficult time taking a piss. He informs the medic, who takes a look, and is so taken aback, that they call up one of their locals that's with them. The mate, local, and medic go off to the side, and has him sit on a log, wang exposed. Local dude knows what the issue is immediately. Local parasite, engorgement, and infection that has a particularly strange hued discharge that has become a blocking issue, common to the parasite. Somehow, medic and local have a side conversation. Then medic comes back to talk to him. There's a solution, but it'll hurt. Seconds later, the butt of a gun comes crashing down on his penis, which expresses a mess of foul-smelling filth, piss, and most of a still wriggling worm. The procedure was repeated multiple times, and eventually for a couple other infantrymen, but it was both relieving and successful, such as it was. The murder of that girl by the two guys in the van that they audio recorded and apparently played to FBI agents to desensitize them or something. I didn't even listen to it or read the whole transcript, but it was enough. Not gonna look it up again. It was months ago and I still think of that poor girl. Frowning face, or girls. I think they were serial killers with a murder van edit. Toolbox murderers. It would suck to be the FBI agents who have to sift through child porn to prosecute those sick ducks who made it. Yep, I don't know how they do it. I'm glad there are people out there with the stomach for it though, to catch those sickos and rescue the kids. Those cute smiling quokkas everyone loves. When pursued by a predator, they will eject their baby from their pouch, abandoning the flailing baby to attract the predator so the mom can get away. Stone cold baby killers. Also, if you eat a fig, you're also probably eating a metabolized wasp inside. Throwing your baby makes sense. If the baby dies, you can just make more. If you die, the baby almost certainly dies and your genetic line is done. The murder of Junko Furuta. Not clicking. I know that story. One of the most ducked up things I've ever read about. If I recall correctly, the guys who did it aren't even in jail now. Yeah, the sentences really pissed me off. The main culprit got 20 years and the other guys only got 5 9-year sentences. Way too ducking light sentences for these monsters. I wonder if the accuser connections had something to do with it. Children are forced to marry rapists to cover the shame of being pregnant, even in first world countries. I won't go into specifics, but once you learn the truth about that one weird tasting pistachio in the bag, there's no going back. Edit. Just came back to see that this blew up. Sorry to all y'all that had your love of pistachios destroyed on this day. Spread the knowledge to your enemies. That clicking on this thread was a mistake. Rats can climb up toilets quite easily through the pipes. Someone please tell me it's a myth. I'm always scared of having a rat crawl up my ass. Rats can swim underwater for 7 minutes. One-way valves are installed in sewer systems to allow feces out into the main sewer but will stop your drains from flooding when backed up. They are sometimes not installed or flushed away or rusted open. I'm a pest controller and have seen it many times. That's the opposite of what they wanted to know, but thank you for the heads up. That my grandmother has a tattoo on her upper inner thigh that says slippery when wet. Rosemary Kennedy, JFK's father, felt one of his daughters, i.e. JFK's sister, was too spirited and had a lobotomy performed on her. They pretty much had her talk during the procedure and only stopped scrambling her brain when she stopped making sense. He didn't tell his wife about the procedure on their daughter until after it was done and she had permanent brain damage. All because he wanted perfect children. Lobotomies in general are just so ducked up. Imagine that happening to you because someone deluded themselves into thinking this is a legit medicinal practice. Thankfully those days are behind us. The San Isidro McDonald's massacre just south of San Diego is the most brutal shooting I have ever heard of, and although not nearly as high in numbers as some of today's shootings, I think it's the worst shooting in terms of savagery. Edit. Also props to the SWAT sniper that took him out with a beautiful shot. I read that whole event by event shit. Goddamn. Well, less than an hour ago I learned that some members of my family have molested other members of my family years ago. At any time, without warning, all human life could be blinked out by a gamma burst. We wouldn't know beforehand. Literally a beam of death traveling at the speed of light. We couldn't prepare and survival would be impossible. It's less of an implicit threat and more of an existential one. The idea that all civilization could just be blinked out suddenly is undeniably terrifying. That it takes 50 pounds to pop a testicle. This doesn't include force as a factor, so it could be like a 2-pound weight from a 25-foot drop as long as the force equals approximately 50 lbs. Edit. Thank you all so much for making this the most upvoted thing I've ever posted on here. Duck. I was feeling my testicle at the moment I read this. I feel the pain. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, while exploring and whaling fishing in the Antarctic Circle, it wasn't uncommon for boat crews to round up loads of penguins, break their legs, then throw them in the furnaces in place of timber when they ran out. On an average we involuntarily swallow 1.4 liters of phlegm mucus every day. Honestly, I kinda already knew I swallow a bit of mucus occasionally, but 1.4 liters a day? I worked as a prosecutor for several years and encountered a number of cases relating to people who committed suicide by jumping in front of trains. The prosecution would often review these files to make sure there wasn't any criminality or recklessness by the train driver. Often these train drivers were incredibly traumatized by what had happened, and tragically it happens far more often than the news reports. I was speaking to this one train driver who works as a sort of union support worker for his colleagues who have had this happen to them. As we were chatting, he referred to the people who suicide by train as grinners. I asked him what that meant. I wish I hadn't, he said, because every driver you speak to, without exception, recalls that the jumpers have this huge smile on their face right up to the moment you hit them. So, they're grinners. I've never been able to get that image out of head. My parents have dildos, vibrators, and nipple clamps. I'm all for keeping a healthy sex life as adults, but I didn't need to know about. Some of the children killed in snuff pedophile rings don't have a case open about their disappearances because they were literally bred for this purpose. Eskimos slurp the nose juice out of their children when they are sick. How do you delete someone else's comment? When you get scurvy, your scars start coming undone. Your body is constantly repairing old wounds, and without vitamin C, it can't make collagen, so the seams start coming apart. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.